was like a zombie till I was awakened, chasing all the Barbies, trying to get the bacon. Pull up in a new toy, feeling like a rude boy. Always acting brazy, but my heart felt like a true toy. Running with my dogs, catching plays. Take you on a trip down memory lane. Pulling pistols, stealing mama's liquor. 17, I think I fell in love with a stripper.
What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 5 of Culture Shock. And I'm here with Ethan, my man Ethan today. And Ethan, first of all, just before we get started, thank you. Thank you for coming. Ethan is a big mentor for me, and I look up to him a lot. And he means a lot to me, so thank you for everything that you've done in my life and how you've blessed me. It means a lot.
Well, before we get started, I want to say thank you for being... Dude, thank you for being just who God's called you to be in this season.
Wow, thank you.
This is so cool. Something that I wish I would have thought of to do this. And I just thank you for being obedient in the moment and being the leader that this generation needs.
Wow, thank you for sure. Yeah. And so today we're talking about grace. So you guys, y'all gonna get a lot out of this. I feel like it's gonna be really awesome, and we're just gonna dig right in. So let's start off. I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you to start off to explain grace in your words, your own words.
So kind of my own words.
Yeah.
Before I try to sum it up in a sentence, I think I should tell you how I've experienced it in a personal story. So whenever the best example I can give well, not the best example, one example I can give is whenever I was probably 5 years old, and it was me and my mom and my dad. This was before my sister was born, so we went over to a friend's house, to one of my parents' friend's house, and they were building a new house. So it's kind of the framework was up, like they just put the drywall and everything together. Well, they didn't have all the doors and everything else, so it was just really open in the house. And so I'm 5 years old, so the thing that I want to do as a 5-year-old with my friend, her name was Abby. We were in the same grade growing up. We wanted to play hide and seek because that's just what you do when you're 5, you know. So we start playing hide and seek. She counts it down, and I go hide first. And something you need to know about me is I am stupid competitive. I want to win at all costs. So it's going to take a lot for me to come out of hiding. So I find this hiding spot, and I'm unfamiliar with the layout of this house because it's just built. And I go and hide in the hallway bathroom, probably the most obvious hiding place in the house. So I'm sitting there and I'm hiding for what feels like an eternity. Like there wasn't anywhere for me to hide in the bathroom, so I just squatted down behind the toilet. Like literally between the wall and the toilet, I just hunkered down. And I was like, there's no way I'm coming out of here. Like, it's either she finds me or I'm gonna stay here until 5 days. Like, I don't care, I'll eat toilet paper. I'm gonna win. So I stay there for what feels like forever, and all of a sudden I hear this loud scream, and it's my mom, and she's just yelling, "Ethan!" And of course, as a kid, I'm like, oh no. But also as a competitive kid, even at 5 years old, I'm like, nope. My friend's tricking me. She's using my mom to get me to come out of hiding. So I go and I peek out the door and I see her, and she's standing in the doorway and just into the darkness. Like, she's just screaming my name. She's saying, "Ethan!" And I remember being like scared because she was scared. She thought that her baby boy had run away or was lost. She thought I was lost. And so I remember, I don't remember what happened next. I don't know if I came out of the room or what exactly happened. But what I do remember is being at home as a 5-year-old boy, just a mama's boy, right? I'm a mama's boy. And I'm actually both. I'm a daddy's boy and a mama's boy. But I remember in this moment, I was so upset. Like, my heart was so sad that I had hurt her feelings, that I had scared her. And I remember my mom coming in my room and sitting in the bed, and I just fell apart in her lap. Like I just fell over and just started crying, and I was just saying, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm getting to the point is that what my mom in that moment, she didn't make me feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't make me feel like I was trash or I was in trouble even.
Yeah.
She wasn't like, you know better, you should have done better, you should have been right by my side the whole time.
Right.
She was just glad that her baby boy was found. And she was just rubbing my back. She was saying, "It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Wow. It's okay." She was just loving me. And I remember she just held me and she said, "I'm just glad that you're home and you're safe.
Wow.
I'm glad you're okay."
Wow.
And so I tell you that story because I think that's God's heart for His children. I think that's a picture of God's grace. One picture of God's grace is that even when we feel at our worst, when we feel like we're unlovable, when we feel like we should get in trouble for hiding things, God's just saying, "It's okay.
Okay.
I just want you to be home with me.
Right.
I just want you to." It's His affection. My mom wasn't angry at me,
right,
but she was affectionate towards me.
right.
Right. So I think that's God's heart. If I could sum it up in one sentence, I know that was a long story, but if I could sum it up in one sentence, it would be, I feel like God's grace says, "I know what you've done, but that's not who you are."
Right. Wow.
"I know what you've done, but that's not who you are."
Yeah.
So if I could sum it up in that one phrase, that's what God's grace is to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think going on what you said, like it's so important how we perceive God, and we talked about that when we ate a few weeks ago. Because some people, like a lot of people, don't perceive God as that good Father that's like, it's okay. Like I know what you've done, but I know it's not who you are. Like I feel like we see God as this all powerful God who doesn't like care, who doesn't see what we do every day, and what we want you guys to see today is like we have a God. We praise a God. We serve a God who comes down from what all this glory and splendor to us, because there's no way we could earn to get to Him. There's no way we could get on the top of the mountain. He's the only God like in other religions say, like all the gods, like people were trying to earn their way up to Him, but for Christianity, for what we believe and what is true is that God comes to us.
Yeah.
And he comes to us as Jesus, and how humble that is, and how like the Pharisees, they wanted a king, but we had a Savior that was our King, that was born in a manger, and that grew up a carpenter, and that's just such a humbling thing that the Savior of the world was a carpenter that was born in a manger. He wasn't born in a palace, and he had no pride. He didn't walk with pride. He walked in love, and that's what He did for us. And like the Samaritan woman, the story of the Samaritan woman, like Jesus pursued her, and I think that's important for us to see today is how Jesus pursues us. Like Jesus doesn't just God's not just sitting up on the top of the hill, like not caring about what we're doing, like not worried about us, not loving us. Like He loves us so much that He pursues us, because the Samaritan woman was completely broken, and she had done she had so many husbands, and like her life was torn apart. And the fact that, and this is very important that we see that he was going to a town, but he went out of his way to go to because he knew where she was, he knew where she was going to be, and he went out of his way to meet her. And that's what God does for us. He goes out of our way to pursue. He goes out of His way, to pursue us. And I think that's just so important, the way His love is, the way His grace is. That's what we want people to see. So.
Yeah. There's a song called King of Kings by Hillsong. We sang it Sunday, and there's a particular verse where it talks about how how Jesus, talking about Jesus, saw through to the other side.
Right.
And it really hit me different on Sunday when I was thinking about it. I was like, Jesus saw through all the pain of the cross. He saw through death, and he saw Josh.
Wow, yeah.
In his grace, he saw Ethan.
Yeah. In
his grace, he saw you, whoever is watching. He saw through to the other side, and his grace is so good to us. The story about the woman caught in adultery, I think is a perfect example of God's grace to us, being caught right in the middle, right in the middle of a mess, right? These religious people found this woman in the middle of adultery, drag her out into the street, and they're trying to trap Jesus, right? So they throw her down and they say, this woman was caught in the middle of adultery, and the law says, the truth said, the law, God's law says that she must be stoned.
Yeah.
So what say you?
Right.
And I think Jesus is just such a great example of how we as Christians, like his grace in this moment is an example for us of how we're supposed to extend his grace. So if you know the story, he writes in the sand, and he stands back up, and he doesn't respond to what they said.
Right.
Because you got to know, like, Jesus, he is God.
Right.
And just a man in the flesh, in one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he knows the law. He is the law.
Yeah.
He's the fulfillment of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what he says. He turns to them and he says, you without sin cast the first stone.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think it's so important for us to realize God's grace in this moment, especially in the culture that we live in right now. Cancel culture is so poisonous.
Yeah.
Is so poisonous, y'all. And God's grace is the antidote to the poisonous cancel culture that we live in. So the Pharisees were trying to cancel this woman. They were literally trying to kill her in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And Jesus, with his grace, says, you without sin cast the first stone. Yeah. It's like, who are we to extend judgment when that's not our place? Right. Rather, we should extend grace. Yeah. We should extend grace because, he kneels back down and he writes in the sand. And of course, there's a lot of speculation of what he writes, but it says that one by one, each of them left until it was just him and the woman. Yeah. And then he says, woman, where are your accusers? And she says, there are none, my Lord. Wow. And he says, I don't accuse you either. Yeah. Go and sin no more. Yeah. So in this moment, we see truth and grace. Wow. Like they are part of part of the same thing. Like you can't have one without the other.
You're talking about the wings.
Yeah. It's like a bird, right? So on one wing we've got truth, on the other we've got grace. And so there's a saying I love to say is that truth without grace is mean, right? So the religious people in this story are the example of just all truth. Like they're mean, right? And that's what a lot of us, a lot of people in our culture now, we're so mean towards people because we see their mess, we see their mistakes that they made, and we're just so quick to cancel somebody. Yeah. And Jesus, in this moment, he knows the truth. The truth is that she was caught in the act of adultery. Right. But what's true is that he knows that he can forgive her sins. Right. So there's his grace is present as well. Yeah. So in this moment, he's so perfectly balanced between truth and grace. And I just think that's what we as Christians, that's how we need to face our culture today. Yeah. It's like, I know what you've done. That's what Jesus is saying to her. Right. It's like, I know what you've done. But what he says, go and sin no more. He says, but that's not who you are, so you don't have to live like that anymore.
So my next question is, what is the difference between religion and relationship?
Religion and relationship. So, on the way, I was thinking about the story of the Pharisee that the religious leader that asked him, so what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says, well, it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second one is just like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And those two statements fulfill all 10 commandments.
Yeah.
So in other words, love God and love others.
Yeah.
Right? So the difference between religion and relationship to me is religion was never, I think about when you do something religiously. Like I can have a relationship and have religious habits. You see what I'm saying? Like, in other words, I'm just talking out loud, like I'm spitballing off the top of my head, because this is something I've been thinking about for a couple of weeks, is when you do something religiously, which means you do something out of habit. Like, I read my Bible religiously. I listen to worship music religiously. I pursue the right relationships religiously. Like, I do it out of habit, from a place of relationship with Christ. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the difference to me, the verse that says, "If you love me, you'll obey my commands." And I think people get it so twisted. You gotta look at the order of things in the Bible. Like, nothing is by accident in Scripture. He says, "If you love me, then you'll obey my commands." In other words, if you have a relationship with me, then you will want to do the things that I'm asking you to do. Like, if you truly know how much I love you, then you will want to obey, because you know that I love you so much, the things I'm asking you to do is going to be good for you. Right? So that's from a place of relationship. The other scripture is Psalm, I think it's 37:4 or maybe 34:7. I can't remember. Dyslexic moment. Where it says, "Delight in the Lord, and I'll give you the desires of your heart." And people get it so backwards. And I've been guilty of this. It's like, okay, God, give me the desires of my heart, and then I will. Then maybe I'll do this whole delight in you thing. Maybe I'll do what you ask. When in reality, is if I find my delight in God first, if I truly pursue a relationship with God first, really the desires of my heart start to change to look more like the desires of His heart. Right? So the more I delight in Him, the more my desires, the more I start to pursue things that align with my relationship. Does that make sense? Yeah. Religion is dead. Relationship is not. Love God and love others.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like going back to kind of the grace thing, and this kind of has to do with how we perceive God. Like God's grace, like for us as humans, can be so hard to wrap our heads around the fact that after all that we've done, He can still love us, right? But like the thing is, like God's love is so different than our love. The way we love, the way we see love, the way
Absolutely.
His filter for that is different. Like he filters grace and love different than we do. Like we don't have it like that. Like that's just not how we were born, right? And like I just think that's so cool to think like that's His grace. Like even though it's hard for us to wrap our heads around sometimes, like we can understand like how much He loves us, because like even though like we're so broken, like He sees us as beautiful, and He loves us that much. And so like we kind of talked about this a little bit back, but I got this question: why does it matter how we perceive God?
Well, it matters because it matters how you perceive anybody.
Wow. Yeah.
Because the way that you perceive something is the way that you approach it.
Yeah.
The way that you perceive something is the way that you approach that thing.
Perception is our ultimate reality.
Yeah. So if you exactly. So if you perceive God as just this Abraham Lincoln statue figure, just this stone cold face, mad at you all the time, if that's how you perceive God, then you're going to approach Him. You might not even approach Him, but the way that you do approach Him will be very closed off. You'll be not open. So the best example, personal story I can give of this is my personal relationship with my earthly father. And for those of you, I understand that there are a lot of situations that maybe you didn't have the best example from an earthly father perspective. personally, whenever I did something wrong, my dad, I got my whippings, right? Like I got whooped every now and then. Yeah. But what I remember the most are the times where my dad would take me into his room and he would sit me down and we would just talk. And he would, and some of y'all are thinking, ain't no way, my mama and my daddy, they did whip, and I had that, like I did get whipped. Yeah. But these moments is what I remember so much, is that my dad would sit me down and he would say, along the same lines as what I said earlier, I know what you've done. Mm-hmm. He said, and he would show me, he'd be like, this is what you did. Yeah. He said, but I know you know better. Yeah. So and I expect more from you. Yeah. And for me as a kid, what that made me do, I didn't want to disappoint. Wow. Yeah. I didn't want to break his heart. Yeah. I didn't want to shatter who he thought I was. Right. Or so my perception of my dad in that moment is like, wow, my dad loves me enough to sit me down and walk through this with me and show me a better way. And so now the way that I approach my dad is I'm way more open to come to him saying like, Dad, look, I'm having trouble with X, Y, and Z. For sure. But it's my perception of him determines my approach. Right. So there's a passage in the scriptures where it's the rich young ruler comes up to Jesus and he says, hey, good teacher, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of heaven? Right. And you got to understand that Jesus is more than just a good teacher. Yeah. But the rich young ruler was coming to him, and his perception was that Jesus is just some good teacher guy that's going to tell me how I can get what I want out of life. Yeah. So the way that he perceived him is the way that he approached him. Yeah. When in reality, Jesus is Lord. Right. So C.S. Lewis has this quote: he's either Lord or lunatic. Like he's one or the other. Yeah. So when we approach Jesus as Lord, it's not, hey, good teacher, tell me what I can do for me. It's more like, God, I know you're the Lord of my life, and today I just want to surrender my plans, and because of your grace, I want to surrender my plans, and I just want you to have your way in my life today. That's what it looks like when we perceive him as Lord. Right. But the rich young ruler says, hey, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus says, well, you know the law, you must, and he kind of runs through this list of the law. Mm-hmm. And the rich young ruler says, well, I've kept all of those since I was a boy. He's flexing a little bit. He's like, no, I've got that. Yeah. So what else? Yeah. And Jesus says, okay, well, sell everything you own and come follow me. Yeah. Give everything you have to the poor and come follow me. When Jesus said that, it says the rich young ruler walked away sad because his perception of Jesus was wrong. Right. He was just a teacher. Right. When really, when we see Jesus as Lord, it causes me to want to give everything that I have to follow this man. Yeah. That's what happened to Peter. Yeah. That's what happened to the disciples. They saw him truly as the Messiah, the one, the Lord of all. And they left everything. Right. And Jesus, like he said, I'll make you fisher of men. Yeah. We can't respond to him in the right way when we don't perceive him in the right way. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's good. For sure, yeah. Like when we perceive him as our good Father, we can respond to him. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And so let's see here. Yeah, so just talking about his love a little bit, like the fact that he loves us through our flaws. Like he loves our broken pieces and he puts us back together. Just like the beauty of what he does for us, that like you can be so broken. Like you can be watching this today and you can be so broken, and like guys, Jesus wants to put you back together. Like he loves you so much. Like he sees all your pieces and he wants to put them back together, and he loves you so much. Mm-hmm. And so like even with like relationships, like you want that boyfriend, you want that girlfriend, or just friend that loves you no matter what, right? And that's gonna be with you no matter what, and that would like die for you. And that's what Jesus is. Like that's what Jesus did. Like Jesus loves us that much that
that he was with us through everything, and he knows that we're broken, and he still chose to die for us. And I think that's so powerful for us to think about. But so I got this story I want to tell. So there's a businessman. There's two businessmen. So the first businessman, he is not a follower of Jesus, right? But to start off, so he say he's having he has to go away for work. He has to go, and he's on his business trip. And say he has the best deal he's ever gotten. He's feeling good, right? So something happened to the businessman, and he got a great deal, right? So he's happy. He's super happy. So he's pumped up. He goes upstairs, and he wants to eat an awesome meal. So he gets a filet, and he gets some asparagus, some mashed potatoes, and he's enjoying himself, right? And so he's doing it. He's living. And so after the meal, he decides he wants to walk. He wants to go take a walk. So we'll say he goes outside, and he sees a homeless man on the side of the street, and he drops him $100 bill because he's feeling good. He's feeling good about himself. So he does that. And then let's say he sees this lady walking down the street with groceries in her hand, and she drops her groceries, and he rushes her there. He picks up her groceries, and he doesn't just give them back to her. He walks the groceries to her house, helps her walk them to her house. And then he keeps walking, and he sees these kids playing football in the street. And the football, somebody misses the football, and it rolls over to him. He picks it up and throws it back to him. He's in a good mood, right? So now, second businessman, he is a follower of Jesus, right? Okay, so we'll say he goes on a business trip, and he has the worst, he loses his client. He has the worst deal. And so he goes downstairs, he eats a kind of okay meal. Right. And so he's not feeling it. And so let's say he goes outside, he sees the homeless man, he gives him a kind of a look, and then he walks right by him. He sees the lady walking down the street. He sees that she drops her groceries, and so he's walking right behind her, and it almost trips him. So he gets onto her. He's like, watch where you're going, right? And then he's walking by, and they're playing football on the street. They throw the football, and he picks the football up because he's so mad. He just chunks it, right? So man, right, yeah. So what I'm trying to get at here is, let's see. Does what the first businessman do make him righteous? No, because let me say this first. Righteous, being right with God, right? So the first businessman he's not a follower of Jesus, right? So he's not righteous. He's not right with God. So does what the businessman does, the first one, does that make him righteous or right with God, or just that? Yeah. So no. Does what the second businessman did when he's a follower of Jesus make him unrighteous? No. He's still right with God, even through what he did was wrong. And that just goes to show that we do works because we love God. We don't do works to earn God. We do works because we love him. Mm-hmm. And so the second businessman is he messes up. He does these things, but that does not make him unrighteous. Yeah. He's still right with God, even though he messed up. And I just think that's important for us to see. I got something here I want to say. You are made righteous by your position, not your performance. Yeah. You're not made right. You're made righteous by your position, not your performance. Not the way you perform, not by what he did. He's made right because he's a child of God, not because he did these good works. And good works are good. We should do good works, but we should not do good works in the motive to get to heaven or to have Jesus. We do good works in the motive of the fact that, oh my goodness, Jesus loves me that much that that He did that for me. He died for me. Even though I have all this stuff wrong with me, I'm such a broken person. Like, Jesus did that much for me, and so I want to serve Him, and I want to do these works because I love Him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would even tag onto that the verse that says that our righteousness is as a filthy rags to God.
Yeah.
Right. So like even though we do good works, our good works are still garbage.
Right.
Compared to our position and right standing with God. That's so good, man. Position. Not performance.
Thank you. Yeah, and then like I'll say this, like I'm sure you've heard this said before, like we go to like people go to hell because we don't believe. We don't go to hell because of sin. And like like it's just that's just hard for us. Like sometimes like that might like you may like I may say that and you like someone may say like what, like you know what I'm saying, because like but this is what grace is, like, and that's what Jesus did for us. And it's like I said before, like it's hard for us to wrap our heads around that sometimes, the fact that of that.
One of my mentors, Pastor Jared, he said that hell is a place where people go to pay for something that's already been paid for.
Wow. Yeah.
You know,
that's good. Yeah.
It's like you can work and try to work your way to God and wind up in hell and you pay the price.
Yeah.
But God's already sent His Son to pay the price.
Right.
Not saying that you don't have righteous acts.
Right.
Back to righteousness and right standing with God. It's because of our position that we want to perform.
Yeah.
Right? Not the other way around. We don't perform for a position.
Right.
Like in the world today, like if you want to start, you got to show up and you got to show out. Right? Like,
that's just how our world is.
That's the way the world works.
Yeah.
But the kingdom of heaven is more like, no, I'm a child of God, and it causes me to want to. So when Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So in other words, love God with all your heart and soul, with all your affection. Love Him with all your affection, with your mind. Love Him with your attention, with all your attention. And then strength. Love Him with the abilities that God's given you. Right? Yeah. So you've got affection, attention, and abilities. Yeah. And then He turns around and He says, and the second one is just like it, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So you love people the same way. Right. It's like God's given me strengths. Right. To honor God with those strengths, but it's also to serve other people with it. God has given me a mind to think of ways the Bible talks about in Hebrews to not think of to never stop thinking of ways to encourage one another. Think of new ways to encourage one another. Like give people your attention. Like don't tell them what's wrong with them all the time. Instead, give them your attention and listen to them. And then affection, like with your heart and your soul, like genuinely prefer your brother over yourself. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's from this place of realizing God's grace over my life, God's grace for me, that He sent His Son, Jesus, stepped down the spiral staircase of heaven, born in a manger, grew up through this humble carpentry profession, and then dies a sinner's death on the cross, although He was perfect, for me, so that now I can have right standing with God. Yeah. So that now, like because of my position, I'm going to live so that somebody else may get to know that Jesus stepped down the spiral staircase of heaven, born in a manger, worked humbly, died a sinner's death on the cross for them, so that they can have right standing with God, so that now they realize it, and now they go tell somebody else that Jesus died a sinner. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think righteousness, it's more so right standing with God gives us these qualities, this perspective of how to live and have influence on the world around us. And it's simply just loving the Lord, loving people, doing our best, want to pursue excellence. We want to do our best because God, not to be perfect, but because God deserves a perfect effort, and to have a good attitude. Choose joy. Right. You know. It's because of God's grace that we can do those things. And hell is a place where people go to pay for something that's already been paid for. And it's because of God's grace and the qualities that we portray that are going to keep people from trying to pay for something that's already been paid for.
That's so good.
You know? I'll say the world today needs Christians to stop canceling one another, to stop being all about the truth and no grace, but to also stop being all about grace and no truth. We've got to have both. So if we can look at people through the lens of, I know what you did, but that's not who you are. If we can see past the problem and instead see to the potential that's in them, and point that out instead of the problem. Because here's the deal: God gave me this. He gave me this image a couple of months ago. It was like a dream type deal, and it was almost like a King Arthur time period. Like we were in this massive battle, and it was me and another guy, one of my brothers. We were fighting in the middle of this huge, what seemed to be a war. We had on like chainmail, and we had shield and sword. And so we're fighting, and I turn around, and his back is to me, so I see his back, and he's got a hole. He has a hole in his armor, like right here, and it really, he's exposed. I see a hole in his armor, and it's just me and him. We're surrounded by all these like enemies or whatever. Well, I started pointing to the hole. And then all of a sudden, we just get trampled from behind. Like, we just get taken over and we get killed. And then it's like everything froze and then reversed and was in rewind, right? And it went back to, and it's like God told me, He said, if you would have stopped pointing at the problem and put your back to his back and protected him and fought for him, you wouldn't have died.
Wow.
So in this culture that we live in, everybody's too busy pointing out the hole in somebody else's armor. When in reality, if we could see the hole and say, all right, I got you. I'm going to put my back to your back, and I'm going to fight this battle with you.
Wow, that's so good.
That's what we need in this culture. It's like, I know the hole's there, but we're going to work together on this.
Wow.
That's what you and I have to have. You see what I'm saying? That's what's going to shock the culture of today. With God's truth and grace.
That's so good, Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, guys, thank you for watching. Guys, Culture Shock episode 6 will be here next week with you guys. But yeah, thank you, Ethan, so much, dude. That was good stuff.
Yeah, check that merch. Check that Culture Shock merch.
Yeah, link in the Instagram bio if you want some merch. Yeah, go check it out. It's pretty good. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.